My parents were supposed to be gone for just one night. That's what they told me when they left for my aunt's wedding 2 states away. I had the whole house to myself, no little sister annoying me, no dad yelling at the TV during a football game. Just me, some pizza, and my PlayStation. It was supposed to be a good night. The first few hours went as planned. I grabbed a soda from the fridge, settled into the couch, and lost myself in a game. The only sounds were the clicks of my controller and the occasional hum of the fridge motor kicking on. Then, around midnight, I got up to grab another drink. As I passed the kitchen window, something made me stop. A strange feeling crawled up my spine, like when someone is staring at you from across the room. I turned my head slowly, scanning the backyard through the glass. Nothing. Just the empty yard, the wooden fence, the old swing set my dad built years ago. I shook it off and told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe I had played too many horror games. Maybe my brain was just messing with me because I was alone. I grabbed my soda and went back to the couch, trying to ignore the unease settling in my gut. 15 minutes later, I heard something. Not a loud crash, not a bang, just the faintest shift of weight. Like someone stepping carefully, trying not to be heard. It was coming from outside. I grabbed the remote and muted the TV. The silence in the house suddenly felt too big, swallowing me whole. I held my breath, listening. Nothing. Still, that feeling hadn't left. That deep, primal sense that I was being watched. I got up again, this time moving slower, quieter. I crept toward the sliding glass door leading to the backyard, peering into the darkness beyond. The porch light cast a dim glow, not strong enough to reach the fence. But in the corner, just barely visible in the shadows. A shape. A person. Standing still. Watching. My stomach twisted and I took an instinctive step back. The figure didn't move. They just stood there, half hidden in the darkness, their face impossible to make out. My fingers fumbled for the lock on the sliding door, making sure it was secure. Then, as if they heard me, the figure took a step forward. I stumbled back from the glass door, my breath caught in my throat. The figure took another slow step toward the house, their movements deliberate, unhurried. The way they moved, it wasn't like someone who had gotten lost or was just passing through. They were here for a reason. For me. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone. My fingers barely worked as I fumbled to unlock it. I forced myself to look down, to dial 911, but when I glanced back up, they were gone. The yard was empty. The swing set, the fence, the patch of darkness in the corner where they had been standing, it was all just as it had been before, except now I knew. Someone had been there. Someone was out there. I stood frozen, my thumb hovering over the call button. Maybe they had run off. Maybe they realized I saw them and bolted. Or maybe they were closer now? The thought made my stomach churn. I turned, flicking on every light in the house as I moved. Living room. Kitchen. Hallway. I didn't care if it made me look scared, I was scared. I double-checked the locks on the front door, then the windows. Everything was secure. Still, my heart wouldn't slow down. I paced the living room, gripping my phone like a lifeline. Calling the cops felt stupid when all I had was, I think I saw someone outside. They'd probably tell me to calm down and go to bed. I didn't want to go to bed. I didn't even want to turn my back to the windows. Instead, I sat on the couch, phone still clutched in my hand, staring at the glass door leading to the backyard. I told myself I would just wait. Just watch for a little while, make sure they didn't come back. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Nothing. The house was silent, the neighborhood still. I started to feel ridiculous. My eyes felt heavy, my body sinking into the couch. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was just a trick of the light or my own paranoia. I don't remember closing my eyes. But I remember waking up. And the first thing I saw, the back door was open. I shot up so fast I nearly fell off the couch. My chest tightened, my pulse hammering against my ribs. The sliding glass door, the one I knew I had locked, was open just a few inches. Not wide, not enough for someone to have walked through, but enough to let them in. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. The house was dead silent. No footsteps, no shifting shadows. But that only made it worse. Whoever had opened that door was already inside. I reached for my phone, my fingers slick with sweat, and dialed 911. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The line rang once, twice, then, 911, what's your emergency? I opened my mouth, but my throat felt locked, like I had forgotten how to speak. My eyes darted around the room, scanning every corner, every dark space too small for someone to hide, until I realized something else. The door wasn't just open. It had been unlocked from the inside. I had checked. I had locked it. but the latch had been undone, as if someone had reached out and, "Hello?" The operator's voice snapped me back. I turned toward the hallway. It stretched into darkness, leading to the bedrooms, the bathroom, so many places for someone to be. "There's someone in my house," I whispered. "I think they broke in." I crept backward toward the front door, my skin crawling with the feeling that I wasn't alone. "Are you somewhere safe?" I reached for the lock, but my hands were trembling too hard to turn it. I don't know. I don't think so. Stay on the line with me. Officers are on the way." A noise, soft, faint, coming from the hallway. A single, slow creak, like a floorboard shifting under weight. I froze, phone pressed so tightly to my ear it hurt. Someone was there. Not outside. Not trying to break in. They had been inside the whole time. I wanted to run, to bolt out the front door, but fear kept me rooted to the spot. My breath was coming too fast, too shallow. I knew I had to move. I had to. A shadow shifted in the hallway, and then a voice, low, barely above a whisper, came from the darkness. "You shouldn't have fallen asleep." Every muscle in my body locked up. My phone nearly slipped from my hand. That voice, it was close. Too close. I wanted to scream, to run, to do something, but I couldn't move. My body refused. My brain felt stuck in slow motion, trying to process the fact that someone had been in my house this entire time. Watching me. Waiting. "Sir? Are you still there?" The 911 operator's voice was a distant hum in my ear. The shadow in the hallway shifted again. A shape, tall and unmoving, barely visible in the darkness. My eyes strained to see details, a face, anything, but all I could make out was an outline. I forced my voice to work, barely managing a whisper. "They're inside." The figure took a step forward. I turned and bolted. I didn't care how loud I was. I didn't care about anything except getting away. I lunged for the front door, yanking at the lock with trembling fingers. It finally clicked, and I wrenched the door open just as a hand grabbed my shirt. I twisted violently, breaking free, nearly tripping over my own feet as I stumbled onto the front porch. The night air hit me like a slap, but I didn't stop. I sprinted across the lawn, nearly dropping my phone in the process. He grabbed me. He tried to grab me. I gasped into the receiver. "Officers are 2 minutes away. Stay outside. Do not go back in." Like that was even a possibility. I ran to the middle of the street where the streetlights poured down cold, artificial safety. My house loomed in front of me, the open door gaping like a wound. Every instinct screamed that he was still inside, watching me, waiting. A moment later, red and blue lights slashed across the night. 2 squad cars screeched to a stop in front of my house, and officers poured out, weapons drawn. One of them ran toward me while the others stormed inside. I stood there, shaking, barely able to breathe as they searched the house. I wanted them to find him. I wanted them to drag him out to prove I wasn't losing my mind. But after 10 agonizing minutes, an officer came back out, his expression grim. "House is clear." I shook my head violently. No, he was in there. I heard him. He grabbed me, he was right there. The officer exchanged looks with his partner. "Nothing's been disturbed. No sign of forced entry. Are you sure you didn't?" "I didn't imagine it." I nearly shouted. The back door was unlocked. He was standing in the hallway. He spoke to me. The officer frowned. "What did he say?" I swallowed hard, the words catching in my throat. He said, "You shouldn't have fallen asleep." A heavy silence settled between us. The officer exhaled slowly, then nodded. "We'll check the security cameras. In the meantime, is there anywhere else you can stay tonight?" I didn't answer. I barely heard him. Because as I stood there, staring at my house, I realized something. The man hadn't broken in. He hadn't forced his way inside. Which meant only one thing. He had been in the house before my parents even left. I didn't sleep that night. After the cops left, after they told me they'd keep an eye on the area, but found no evidence of anyone in the house, I sat on my neighbor's porch, staring at my front door, too afraid to go back inside. My parents wouldn't be home until the next evening. I called my mom, told her everything, but she brushed it off as paranoia. "You were probably dreaming," she said. "You did say you fell asleep." I wanted to scream. I knew what I saw. I felt the hand grab me. But by morning, when the sun poured over the rooftops and the night's horrors seemed distant and absurd, even I started to question myself. Maybe I was just sleep-deprived. Maybe my mind did play tricks on me. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I just didn't realize how wrong. When I finally worked up the courage to go back inside, everything seemed normal. The kitchen, the living room, even the hallway, nothing out of place. But as I walked toward my bedroom, something small caught my eye. The hallway closet door. It was open just an inch. That was weird. I never used that closet. It was mostly full of old coats and boxes of Christmas decorations. My stomach twisted. I reached out and pulled the door open. At first, all I saw were coats hanging in a row, the space beneath them dark and shadowy. But then, a smell. Something stale. Human. My fingers tightened on the edge of the door. That feeling from last night, the sick, gut-deep certainty that someone had been there, crawled back up my spine. I stepped closer. Something was off about the way the coats hung. Almost like... I reached forward and pushed them aside. And that's when I saw it. A hole. A small, jagged hole in the drywall, just big enough for someone to squeeze through. I stood there, my heart pounding in my ears, staring at the hole like it might blink back at me. It was dark inside, the space beyond disappearing into pitch black. I didn't want to look. I had to look. My shaking fingers pulled out my phone, flicking on the flashlight. I angled it inside, the beam cutting through the darkness. And my stomach dropped. There was a mattress. An old, stained mattress shoved into the narrow space behind the wall. Next to it, crumpled food wrappers. Empty water bottles. A single, filthy blanket. Someone had been living here. For how long? My breath came fast and shallow as I angled the light around, searching for any sign of movement. The crawlspace stretched further back, disappearing into darkness, connecting to God knows where. I needed to get out. I needed to run. Then I saw something that made my entire body lock up. A notebook. It was lying next to the mattress, its cover grimy and bent. I reached in with trembling fingers and pulled it out. The second I flipped it open, bile rose in my throat. My name. Over and over again, scribbled in messy, uneven handwriting. My name, my schedule, notes about where I went, what I did, what I ate. And then, a final entry written just last night. He fell asleep on the couch. I almost got caught. I dropped the notebook like it burned me. My whole body felt like it didn't belong to me anymore, like I was floating outside of myself, looking down on some horror movie scene that couldn't possibly be my life. I stumbled back, my pulse a deafening roar in my ears. I needed to call the cops. I needed to get out of the house. Then, from somewhere deep inside the crawlspace, a noise. Shuffling. Breathing. I wasn't alone. I turned and ran. The police searched the house from top to bottom. They followed the crawlspace all the way through to the attic, where they found more signs of living. A sleeping bag, a stash of stolen food from our kitchen, even a small stack of my dad's old clothes. But the man himself? Gone. Somehow, between the time I ran and the time the cops arrived, he vanished. They told my parents it was likely a squatter. Someone who had slipped in at some point and found a hidden space to stay. But that didn't explain everything. It didn't explain the way he knew my schedule. It didn't explain how long he had been there. And it sure as hell didn't explain the last note they found in the crawlspace, scrawled onto the back of a torn-out magazine page. It only had 5 words. I've been here for years. It's been months since that night, and I still don't sleep well. My parents had the crawlspace sealed up, but it doesn't help. Because no matter how much I try to convince myself that he's gone, sometimes when the house is quiet, I still feel watched. The days after they found the crawlspace were a blur. My parents were horrified. My mom cried. My dad yelled at the cops, demanding to know how someone could have been living in our house without us knowing. But they never found him. No fingerprints. No clear point of entry. It was like he had slipped through the walls and vanished. We stayed in a hotel for a week while my dad hired contractors to seal every possible hidden space in the house, crawlspaces, attic, even under the stairs. He installed new locks, cameras, motion sensors. He wanted to believe that if he could just seal everything up, we'd be safe. But safety is an illusion. And I knew that better than anyone. We moved back in, and for a while, things were normal. Or, at least, they looked normal. My parents acted like it was over, like the nightmare had been dealt with. But I couldn't shake the feeling. That heavy, crawling sensation of being watched. Then, about 2 weeks later, it started. I was lying in bed one night, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself to sleep, when I heard it. A single, deliberate footstep. It wasn't in the hallway. It wasn't outside my door. It came from inside the walls. My body went rigid. I held my breath, waiting, listening. Nothing. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was just paranoid. Then, another step. I sat up, my pulse hammering. It was faint but unmistakable. A slow, careful shift of weight. Like someone walking but trying not to be heard. I scrambled out of bed, grabbed my phone, and turned on the flashlight. I scanned the room, the walls, the floorboards. I knew it was impossible. We had sealed everything. We had checked. But as I stood there, phone shaking in my grip, I remembered something. The attic. They found signs of living up there, but they never found an entry point. My dad assumed the guy crawled up through the walls. But what if we had it backwards? What if he had always been in the attic, and we just drove him further in? I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I told my dad I was hearing noises. He brushed it off, said it was the house settling. I didn't believe him. So I waited until my parents left for work, then I grabbed a ladder from the garage and climbed up to the attic hatch. It hadn't been touched since the cops searched it. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the handle. Then I pushed it open. The smell hit me first, dust and something rotting. I lifted my phone, shining the light inside, my breath caught in my throat. It was empty. No sleeping bag. No stolen food. Just the exposed wooden beams and a thick layer of dust. But then my flashlight caught something. Something carved into the wood near the far corner. The words were rough, uneven, like they had been scratched with something sharp. I stepped closer, the hairs on my arms rising. It was a message. 3 words. I never left. A sound came from behind me. A soft, sharp inhale. Like someone breathing in. I spun around, my phone's light slicing through the darkness. But there was nothing there. Nothing I could see. We moved a month later. My parents told people it was for my dad's job, but I knew better. I begged them to leave. I don't know if they ever found him. I don't know if he followed us. But sometimes when I'm lying in bed in our new house with all the doors locked and the attic sealed, I still hear it. That single, careful footstep. Coming from inside the walls. And I know. He's still here. The move was supposed to be a fresh start. New house, new town, new locks, new walls. But fear doesn't listen to logic. It doesn't care about fresh starts. It burrows deep, nests inside you, and waits. The new house was bigger than the old one, 2 stories, a basement, no attic this time. My parents said it was an upgrade, a way to put the past behind us. But from the first night, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't anything obvious. Just a feeling. A weight pressing against my chest when I lay in bed, the kind of quiet that isn't really quiet. I told myself it was just paranoia, that I had spent too long being afraid and now my brain expected to be watched. But then the noises started again. Not right away. Not every night. Just often enough that I couldn't ignore them. A soft creak when no one else was awake. A faint shuffle like weight shifting against wood. And once, a breath. Right outside my bedroom door. I didn't tell my parents. They wouldn't believe me. They were done with all of this. To them, we had escaped. The nightmare was over. But I knew better. So I started searching. I checked every closet, ran my hands over the walls, knocked for hollow spaces. Nothing. Every inch of this house was solid. Except the basement. It was unfinished, mostly used for storage. The air was always damp, the concrete walls rough and uneven. I never liked going down there, but one night, when I heard something below my room, I grabbed a flashlight and forced myself to check. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Just boxes, old furniture, the water heater humming in the corner. But as I swept my flashlight along the back wall, something caught my eye. A crack. A jagged, uneven split in the concrete, barely an inch wide. I stepped closer, my stomach twisting. The crack wasn't natural. It looked like it had been chiseled away. I knelt, pressing my fingers against it and felt a faint rush of air. Cold, damp, coming from inside the wall. There was something behind it. Something hollow. I grabbed a metal rod from a pile of old tools and wedged it into the crack. I hesitated, my entire body screaming at me not to do this. Then I pried the stone loose. The second it came free, a damp, rotting smell rushed out. My flashlight beam cut through the dust, revealing a narrow opening leading to somewhere. Somewhere that shouldn't exist. Somewhere someone had been using. Then I saw them. Footprints. In the dust, leading from the hole. To the stairs. To the house. I ran. I flew up the basement steps, shoving the door closed behind me, locking it. My breath was coming too fast, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I needed to call someone. The cops. My dad. Anyone. But then, a soft creak. From the upstairs hallway. My stomach twisted. I turned my head slowly, dread pooling in my gut. And then I saw it. A figure standing at the top of the stairs. Tall. Motionless. Watching me. The dim glow from the night light in the hallway barely illuminated them, but I could make out the shape of their head, the outline of their shoulders. They had been in my house the whole time. A small, sharp breath slipped out of me. That was all it took. The figure moved. I ran. I don't even remember unlocking the front door, just bursting through it, sprinting down the street barefoot, my phone clutched in a death grip. I didn't stop until I was at my neighbor's house, banging on their door, screaming for help. When the cops arrived, they searched the house. And just like before, they found nothing. No footprints. No sign of forced entry. And the hole in the basement? Sealed up. Like it had never been there at all. We moved again after that. My parents didn't fight me on it this time. They didn't even ask questions. We just left. But I know the truth. This person, they weren't breaking in. They weren't following us from house to house. Because they had never left. They had always been here. Living in the spaces we don't see. In the walls. In the crawl spaces. In the dark places we pretend don't exist. And no matter where I go, I know they're waiting. Because you can't escape someone who is always inside. We moved again. A different town. A different house. Smaller this time, no basement, no attic, no hidden spaces. My parents told me this was it. We were done running. This house is new, my dad said. No history, no crawl spaces, no secrets. And for a while, I believed him. Months passed. Nothing happened. No noises. No creaking footsteps. No shifting shadows. For the first time in years, I felt safe. And that was my mistake. Because that's when they let me see them. It happened while we were on vacation. A small trip just a few days away. My parents wanted to celebrate the new start, so we booked a room at a beachside hotel. The first night was normal. I slept better than I had in years. But on the second night, I woke up to a noise. Not inside the room. Outside. I turned my head, groggy, trying to place it. The hotel room was dark, the only light coming from the neon glow of the motel sign outside. Then I realized what the noise was. Tapping. Soft, deliberate. Coming from the closet door. My whole body went cold. The closet was just a few feet away, the door closed, but something was inside. Tapping. Waiting. I turned toward my parents, ready to shake them awake. And that's when the closet door clicked open. Just an inch. Just like at the old house. I stopped breathing. My entire body went rigid as the door slowly creaked open. The darkness inside the closet was thick, swallowing everything, but as my eyes adjusted, I saw them. A face. Not hidden. Not in the shadows. Just standing there. Watching me. They didn't move. They didn't lunge. They just smiled. Wide. Too wide. Like they had been waiting for this moment. Like they were enjoying it. The air left my lungs in a strangled, broken gasp and my arm jerked toward my dad. And then, nothing. Blackness. I woke up the next morning in bed. Sunlight streamed through the window, my parents moving around the room like nothing had happened. I bolted upright, my chest heaving. The closet, last night, there was someone. My mom gave me a concerned look. Honey, the closet was empty. We checked. I shook my head violently. No. They were there. They were watching me. I leapt out of bed, yanking the closet door open so hard it banged against the wall. Empty. No marks. No footprints. Like no one had ever been there at all. My dad sighed. You were dreaming. But I wasn't. I know what I saw. And worst of all, I recognized them. The figure. The face. It was the same shadow from my old house. The same presence I had felt for years. They had been following me. Not moving from house to house. Moving with me. Because they never lived in the walls. Not really. They lived in me. I don't know what they are. I don't know how long they've been watching. But I do know one thing. No matter where I go. No matter how far I run. No matter how many doors I lock or walls I check. They will always be there. Waiting. Smiling. Because they don't live in the dark. The dark lives in me. I stopped talking about it after that night in the hotel. My parents already thought I was losing it. If I told them I recognized the face in the closet, if I admitted that the thing watching me had followed me from house to house, from life to life, they would have sent me straight to therapy. So I pretended. I smiled when they talked about how good the move had been for me. I nodded when they said I looked happier. I forced myself to laugh, to eat, to sleep. But I knew the truth. And so did they. It wasn't over. I felt it first in small ways. Catching my own reflection in a mirror and noticing, for a split second, that my face didn't quite look right. That my smile was a fraction too wide. That my eyes lingered a little too long after I turned away. Then there were the nights when I'd wake up with my door open even though I always shut it before bed. The times I'd find things in my room moved, just slightly. My desk chair turned a little to the side. My closet cracked open an inch. My shoes facing the wrong way. And then one night I heard it. Not footsteps, not tapping, something worse. Breathing, soft, shallow, coming from right beside my bed. I lay frozen, every muscle locked, my back to the sound. It was so close. Close enough that I could feel warmth against my shoulder. I wanted to move. I needed to move. But I knew the second I turned my head, I'd see them, standing there, smiling, watching. So I did the only thing I could. I shut my eyes and waited for morning. I don't think they live in the walls. I don't think they ever did. They live in the spaces we don't pay attention to. The corner of the room where the light doesn't quite reach. The sliver of darkness between the closet door and the floor. The reflection in the mirror when you've already turned away. They don't need to break in. They don't need to hide. Because they were always here, waiting for us to notice, waiting for us to see them. And the second we do, they never leave. I stopped looking into mirrors after that night. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. It wasn't just fear. It was understanding. I had spent years trying to escape them. Running from house to house, tearing through walls, sealing up crawl spaces, searching for something hiding. But they were never hiding. They were waiting. Because the truth is they aren't coming for us. We bring them with us. It was a few weeks later when I finally saw him again. I was walking home from school, earbuds in, the world a blur of distant cars and afternoon sunlight. The move had put me in a new town, a new school, a new life. But it didn't matter. Because they were here too. At first, I didn't notice him. He blended in with the world, just another person standing at the corner near my house. Still, something in my gut told me not to look. But I did. And when I did, I realized he was already looking at me. Not moving. Not blinking. Just standing there, smiling. Wide. Too wide. Like he had been waiting for me to see him. And the second I did, he waved. I don't run anymore. I don't bother checking my locks or listening for footsteps or searching for cracks in the walls. Because it's pointless. Because they are always there. Waiting in the quiet places. Watching from the corners of the world we choose to ignore. And the moment you see them, the moment you realize they've been there all along, they see you too. And they never stop watching.